Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
What can we do to help build our parish, to help our priest build the parish? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church and our local parish. This is Tom Caffrey with my co-host, Dan Duddy. How you, Dan?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Hey, do you have, you're closer, I'm pretty close to the water, but I think you're closer to the water. You get any kind of a sea breeze, or probably when you're up on the, you have like the, what do they call it, the bird seat?
Catbird seat? Oh.
What's that one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
We need Jim Mulville on here.
It's not the catbird seat, right? I know you're talking about the basket that's way up on top of the mast that you with the guys.
Yeah.
The one.
Yeah. So when you're up on your balcony, you get a little more of a breeze than you would on your.
Oh yeah, we had a really nice breeze here. Always. Sometimes it's a little too breezy. Got to batten down the hatches, but it's nice.
Oh, okay. Obviously, you say too breezy. Too breezy for what?
Too breezy to actually even sit out there because chairs blow around and stuff. It gets windy.
How can they blow around if you're sitting in them?
Well, I mean, it's that windy. If you weren't sitting in the chair,
that's got to be a strong wind.
Watch yourself.
I mean for anybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I was thinking you were going to say because you'd get sand in your eyes or something like that. But maybe
no. There's no sand. I mean, down on the beach, obviously, you're going to get sand in your eyes. But we're up the street, way up the street, so no rocks. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, speaking of your neighborhood, we were having a good conversation leading up to this which was prompted by an experience you had recently with a priest. So why don't you use in your parlance, the kickoff here, and you take it. Tell us what happened.
Sure. I mean, it's just a good conversation piece, and I think it definitely. The truth is always right under our nose, right? Sometimes we overthink things and we want to have, these themes that are, based on conspiracy and controversy. But I just want to tell you about a real nice, conversation I had with a priest. I actually lined up a confession with him through his office. They told me he would hear my confession the next morning after 8:30 Mass, daily Mass. And the reason why I lined it up was because I'm working, during confession hours for the most part. With my summer job, but I got into the sanctuary with the priest, and had a really nice confession that turned into a discussion. And his heart, he's an older guy, Father Joe. His heart was it was almost pleading with me to do something to enliven his parish. And back it up a few days, the Sunday before, I had gone to Mass at the same church, Padre Pio. I was asked to be an usher because they were short on ushers. And I'm thinking, why do I not do these things for the church? Usher or whatever, Eucharistic minister, these things. And in my head, my prideful head, I'm like, I do plenty, you know what I mean? Like in my prideful head, I'm flying around, giving talks, I do a radio and, all that stuff. But really this sweetheart of a man is asking for people to be where their feet are when they're at the parish and come in and enliven the parish. And I'm like, I'm going to sell out to this. And I said, I got to talk to Tom about this. Let's get this on the air and let's try and enliven our listeners to understand this. This is what I think is very important. We identify with the work that we do. So let's do the work that is going to give us perhaps either a deeper identity or a new identity. And let it be with the understanding that any work that we do for the church, in the church, is a ministry. And that once we solidify that identity that we're ministering to the church, then the church becomes enlivened again. I think then we're less likely to be parish bashing, Instead, we're parish building, and then with that excitement comes confidence to invite others to come in, because I think we're kind of compromised, Another thing, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I want to lay one more point to what he said. What he said was, not exactly in these words, but, we have quality versus quantity, right? We know that the quantity is down. There's not that many, same number of people in the congregation, in the pews, as there once were.
Nor as many priests.
Nor as many priests, yes. In fact, a lot of these parishes are now combined parishes, right?
Right.
But he brought up a quality issue without using the word quality. Not only are the numbers down, but the souls in the pew have become far less Catholic right before his eyes, right in front of him. And he actually used the word Democrats. We have Democrats in the pews. And you and I have talked about this before. You can't be a good Catholic and be whatever a good Democrat is. But you can't do both. You know what I mean? And this is what his concern is. So he actually asked me if I would come in and talk to the congregation and give a good fundamental talk about the truth, because he says when he does it, it becomes controversial and they leave the pews. He said, but if a layman comes in, he's got a better shot at it. You know what I mean?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, how old is this priest? Guess.
Well, guess 72. That's a guess.
Okay, so that makes some sense from looking at the surveys and whatnot, but we'll get to that in a bit. Yeah,
so I'm going to register at his parish. Right now I'm registered with Mora, probably 20 miles away because of the Latin Mass. And when I came home and I told her about the conversation, she saw the passion, but the passion came from the priest's passion and his hunger. And Mora said, why don't we just do it? Let's just register there. And I said, I'll become a full-time usher.
Now, why don't you do this at your home parish?
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit before we turned the mic on. That's a really good question. I don't want to be contradictory either, but
couldn't they use you and Mora?
Of course they could. Now, this is where I'm going to walk a line of contradiction here. My home parish, which is right down the street, is non-conservative, okay? But here's the kicker with my heart of hearts. It was because of the relationship that was developed so quickly through his candidness, Father Joe, that I said, I want to be in this priest's parish. I want to do everything I can to help this man. It just hit me in the heart like that. You know what I mean? So that's the main reason why I would drive past the other parish to go be with Father Joe and help him out. But there's that little contradiction coming back at us. There is that non-conservative, approach that is happening in this church. Mora cannot receive still in that church by mouth, where she can at Padre Pio. So that's all in there too. It's undeniable.
Yeah, it's difficult. Difficult for pastors, for the priests. This bifurcation, this split in our church that I'm sure I'm not so sure. Just looking at the very old text, certainly going way back in the early church and whatnot, the social upheaval, obviously a lot of upheaval. People were going to the lions. They were persecutions until Constantine, and it's not like the spigot shut off right after Constantine. And then the Edict of Milan, where there was essentially, first it was we're not going to persecute the Christians. And then it gets to the point where it's almost like Christianity becomes the state religion, which to this day brought in problems to the church. And on one hand, it was great. On the other hand, it's this getting in bed with the political leaders. And of course, Constantine was the political leader. And if you didn't agree with Constantine, well, then you were looking for a liberal church, let's say. It's very difficult for me to think of a left-right church. To me, and I think you think this way, maybe not as much as I do, but that we have one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. But it's when you know that there are Catholics and prominent Catholics, for example, including clergy, who see the living of that faith, like they'll emphasize one thing, one social concern over another. And so, it's like that seamless garment. They're not going to pay too much attention, let's say, to abortion, but they are going to focus on social justice matters. So, it's like, you and I have had this conversation about the Latin Mass. So the Latin Mass the focus is totally on the altar, and it's more solemn and maybe some somber aspect because the emphasis is on the crucifixion, Christ giving up his life for us. To the newer and again reflected, as we've said in the past, reflected in the style, design, the architecture of churches, the older and the newer ones. So the newer ones, I don't do that anymore, but I certainly have denigrated the newer churches. They're not attractive, but in terms of theology of the church, and does this reflect the theology of the pastor who was involved in the building of that church? Almost certainly, that
Sure.
It's more of like the emphasis is on we're having a banquet. We're at the Last Supper. We're the disciples at the table, and we're going to share in this banquet. So there's a combination of that. And so if you have a priest like Father Joe, the one you're talking about, he's older. I don't know whether he's one of the fewer priests who would consider themselves conservative, maybe politically or socially conservative at that age, because he's closer to Vatican II and the upheaval right after Vatican II than you and I are. We're not that far behind him, but still, when I became an altar boy, there was still a residue of Latin, but that was just for maybe a year or two. Yeah, maybe a few years, but anyway. So being involved in the culture and being involved with guys, men's groups and whatnot, I know that most of the guys I'm around, whether it's in my parish, in the retreat house, and other places, including WQPH, tend to be much more conservative, if we're going to call it that way. So your priest, Father Joe, I would have thought since he's closer to Vatican II, I would have thought he would be a little bit more liberal, but obviously he's not. Again, looking at the data from surveys, younger priests are more conservative than older priests.
Right.
Right? So you might have a liberal priest or a liberal pastor at your home parish, and you don't like that. And some people don't want to go there or they don't want to go to their home parish because they don't like the homilies, they don't like the music. There's other things about the liturgy. I've done that, but then on the other hand, I think that's why I said it to you about you and Maura, but people like you, where could you use your gifts, your talents, to build up your home parish? Because it's almost like it needs it even more. At least for people like you.
Yeah, it's true. But the fact remains, though, my personality is whatever it is, where I sit on the side of the fence, whether it's conservative side or the liberal side, and I definitely sit on the conservative side. I don't know if a liberal, and I don't like the terms either, Tom, so I'm with you on that, but there's truth in it. I don't know if a liberal pastor would want me to become involved in his church or not. If he'd just be fine with where he's at.
How would he know? If you're serving, if you're going to be an usher, how would he know that the two of you aren't in sync in terms of social issues?
Right. So that brings up another point. I think that we should go out of our way, and I think we'll be pleasantly surprised, to make an appointment with our pastor and sit down and just come to know him. And introduce yourself, men or women out there, whoever, and just come to learn where they're coming from. And I think that's hugely important, because that's what happened to me. So and once again, it was the fundamental truth, the reality, the salt of the earth, heart to heart, that inspired me with this priest.
But you were in comfortable territory, though.
Yeah, so no, I get your point, and it's a challenge. And once again, my good friend, you challenged me. But to
always
walk
in
through
love.
that door, yeah, I know. To walk through that door and sit down with the priest of my local parish, to have him come to know me, is probably that would be a good thing to do. It'd be a virtuous thing to do, because in truth, that would be me practicing what I'm preaching.
He's not your enemy, but you could think of it's like, okay, well, what Jesus said, love your enemy. It's easy to go to a place where you're comfortable and it's like you. And I'm saying this to me too.
No, it's a really good point. I'm going to one quick thing. What you just hit me in between the eyes with is, if you have the gift and humbly know that it's from God, then why not go in and share it and see where it falls? Go ahead.
But if you're saying your gift is that you got to give this talk, a particular talk on social matters, and you come across as, okay, well, anybody who's a Democrat here, you might as well leave because you're not going to like what I'm going to have to say, as opposed to, because then you're, as opposed to you serving in your humility that, okay, you're not this guest star making a talk, but you're doing the nuts and bolts of building a parish, working as an usher or a Knight of Columbus or something like that to, make a pancake breakfast or something like that.
Yeah. No, it's a very revealing conversation. It provokes soul searching, which is why I like our, when we take our themes to a good conversation. But I could not ever imagine this priest, who I came to know a little bit at the local parish, we'll call him the liberal priest, ever saying to me, we need to talk to my congregation because we're loaded with Democrats. I just could not imagine him saying that. I've talked to this priest before, but so I mean, what do I do in that case, Tom? Do I then go in there and be strapped and have a leash tightened up on me when I know I've got gifts and maybe I'll never break down that wall between him and me? Or what are you suggesting? You're a good mentor. I'm
just saying that those who, especially if you perceive the need to be greater, and because it's kind of either it's driven you away or you have chosen, it's really more the latter, you've just chosen to say, I don't like the way they do the liturgy at this mass, at this parish. Mm-hmm. And so then I got to be careful to say, and remember now I'm talking to you, I'm talking with you, I'm talking to the audience, I'm talking to myself.
Everybody's listening, sure. Yep.
That am I judging them and saying, okay, well, I want to go with the liturgy that I like. I got to be careful that it's not, I don't put it all about me and what pleases me.
That's true, yeah. Yep.
And that's, and I don't know whether I mentioned this on the air several weeks ago, that when you and I went to a concert in Pennsylvania, the boys' choir, Philadelphia, and I stayed there overnight. You and Maura went home that night, and so when I was coming home, I had the opportunity to go to a 9:00 mass in my parish, and I said I was going to turn the steering wheel to the left on this road to take me to the church. I said no, they've got the drums and they've got the guitars, and I can't stand it. And so I said, no, I'm going to go to this small little chapel that's affiliated with a local college. Well, I get there at 6:00 and there's no mass because it's affiliated. The college, I didn't realize the college was out of session, for summer.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't go to mass. And I was kind of convicted. I thought about it. I said, you know what? I missed mass. I missed the Eucharist. I missed communion with my brothers and sisters, and I missed supporting my parish priests because I didn't like it was about me and it wasn't about glorifying God. Right? So
yeah. And you're consistent with that point that, the saying, I don't get anything out of Mass. I stopped going to Mass. I never get anything out of it. And we're there to participate in the sacrifice. We're there to give ourselves. Yeah, that's huge. But, Vatican II, how do we say this, kind of loosened the leash on the structure of the Mass to the point where we've talked about this many times, where now there are drums on the altar, as you said, and there are interpretive dancing going on now.
Well, hold on. Let me jump in, though. My son Kevin was in Africa for 7 weeks. He was in 5 different countries. And I think I think I forwarded one to you, a clip that he sent me, 1 or 2 clips of when he was in the local churches. He was the only white person in the church. Just the thought was entertaining, and I know the looks that he got.
Yeah.
But the clips he sent me of the church, all the church members singing, and it was packed. It looked like every mass, every clip, video clip he sent me, the church was packed, and everybody was singing, not just the choir. It was gorgeous, and they were dancing because it's their culture, and they were using drums.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's because you and I think of the 1960s and 70s when we had acid rock and stuff like that, and we've got guitars and they're all on drugs and whatnot. Okay, we don't want that in our church.
No, and you have that heart. You have the heart for music. It's in your charism. But my point is, because of the leash being loosened, now we have all sorts of different variables happening in different churches. I wasn't criticizing that, but my point is now, what happens is it fans the fire of people now choosing where they want to go and what they like and what they dislike. So now they're getting pulled to other churches.
Oh, there's got to be a fire. If you're saying it fans the fire, there's got to be a fire that it's fanning.
Yeah.
Why is there that fire?
I think the variables fans the fire of choice. If there were far less variables, if the leash was shortened, then we could bring people more readily to Christ himself, as we should. But now there are too many different choices, too many different variables. But there's too much flexibility in our churches because of Vatican II.
So do you want a military type of mass where everybody's in lockstep and say this is the one way you do it? Because that's the reason, at least that's what a lot of people say, and I've read this in a number of books. That's the reason we lost China with the missionaries, because they kept going to Rome saying, we can't bring Rome or Europe to Asia. And Rome said, no, you got to do it this way.
Yeah.
And to my point about, to Africa and Kevin's experiences, the church is growing, as and we've talked about it, the church is growing significantly in Africa and Asia. So my concern is, reflexively, you're right in the middle. I know what I like, but I've got to say, it can't be what I like, or it can't only be what I like.
Right.
Because the liturgy of the Eucharist, the liturgy of the Word, and the liturgy of the Eucharist, I mean, that has to be the same. They're reading the same readings.
Yeah. Scott Hahn, that was one of the beauties of the Catholic Church when he converted. He said, it's wonderful to be in a Catholic Mass and know that the exact same thing is happening on the other side of the world, the exact same way, the exact same gospel. Unless
you're in a Byzantine church, for example, Catholic Church, where it could be it's all done in chant and you're there for 3 hours. The question, ladies and gentlemen, that we have to ask, the we is Dan and me and you, of course, is, all our listeners, to say, what can we do to help our parish priests have fulfillment and help to grow the parish and ultimately the kingdom of God on earth?
Amen. Yeah, just get in there, minister, and make it count while you're there. Give. I know I'm going to step up. I was inspired by that intimate human conversation with a pastor who I met that day, and it really, really, really affected me in a very positive way.
Okay, so go love your enemy, and I want you to sit down and have a nice talk with your local home parish pastor. And that's going to be part 2 of this discussion, ladies and gentlemen.
Come on, Dad.
And I'm thinking about one other person that you and I know very well. I'm picturing him listening to this and saying, yeah.
He's totally listening.
Okay, Tom. Yeah. I'm never going to sit and listen to those drums and guitar. But
I know that. Yeah, he's like.
How many guys would it take to hold him down, to just make him listen there? Maybe we could tranquilize him a little bit.
No, that would just get him angry.
Oh, God Almighty! All right, brother. Great conversation as always, and and as always, we should have a little assignment. And our assignment is how do we build the kingdom when we get off the air?
Yeah, let's get out of the comfort zone. Let's do something different this week for the church.
That's right.
Pastor.
Do that faith. Live that faith. Just don't say I believe.
Yeah.
How do people know you believe? So
Yeah, get involved. Jump in there.
all
Amen.
right.
Okay, folks, stay tuned for the Angelus, and following the Angelus is Your Prayer Intentions with Peter and Jemmy.
WQPH Radio, Marianne, Gene, James, their support is great, and they and we need your support, ladies and gentlemen. So anything you can do to help us out, including your prayers as we pray for you. God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tommy. God bless you all.
You are listening to WQPH 89.3 FM Shirley, Fitchburg. And now a word from author Peter and Jemmy, who is the host of Your Prayer Intentions, taking place every Saturday at 12:30 p.m.
Whether you're donating money or giving us prayers, without you, we don't go on. And if you do want to help us go on, please consider going to WQPHradio.org. There's a donate button there. You can give once, you can give monthly, and it makes a difference. It keeps all of our shows, and we have a great lineup of shows, keeps us going. And whether you're a fan of Your Prayer Intentions, whether you like Steve's show, Benedict's Harris Sundays at midnight, whether you like Brother Matthew and Brother Anthony from the Housetops, which is on Sundays 10:30 a.m. and 4 p.m., whether you're a fan of the Children's Rosary, which we have every day at 5 p.m., 7 days a week, whether you like our Local Matters show, which is Saturday at 11, or Talk Catholic, which comes right after us at 12:30. Larry's Music Off, Sunday at 11 a.m. We have the Shepherd's Pie Saturdays at 1 p.m. Or Dan and Tom with the 13th Apostle, which comes just before us at 11:30. Any of those shows and all the stuff you donate, you help these things come out. But what's also at the WQPH website, in addition to podcasts of our shows, is the prayer wall.
Right on the prayer wall, support WQPH and get WQPH 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on WQPHradio.org.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?